was doing with coffee and drinks. It was just amazing. So we're kind of continuing the conversation and brainstorming just a little bit on what we might be able to do for a gourmet brewing event coming up. Right now, it's tentatively set up for April 1st. So, Justin, how are you? And tell me where you are right now.
I'm doing well, Doug. Here in Chicago, Illinois, enjoying the eventual arriving of spring. So, as you know, in Chicago, we get the worst of it as far as snow goes. So, nice to be
Well,
done.
you look like you're dressed warmly, so spring
It's
must not quite be there yet.
it's still cold, yeah.
So, Justin, I know at CoffeeCon, a lot of people knew what Kyoto coffee was. And that's an area you have years and years of experience with it, right?
Yeah, about 9 years experience now.
9 years. Could you describe for those that are just kind of have happened upon this? And again, I want to welcome everybody. This is one of my pop-up events, and I'm talking to Justin Doggett, and we are brainstorming an upcoming event. And I just wanted you to pop in. If you want to say something in the chat or ask a question, we'll talk for a few minutes and jump back off. So, Justin, if you don't mind describing what Kyoto coffee is.
So basically, Kyoto style coffee is a slow drip style of doing cold brew, where you hold the coffee grounds inside of a chamber and then you slowly drip water one drop at a time through the coffee grounds. So when you make coffee, whether it's hot or cold, you can opt for really two different major styles. There is either you steep the coffee grounds, and that's something like a French press, where the coffee grounds are just free floating in the water, and then you filter that, or you can do something called percolation, which is basically where the water is allowed to flow through the coffee grounds while they're locked in place and extract the coffee that way. So just like with the hot style of coffee, when you use immersion, you get certain qualities. So with a French press, you get like kind of more murkiness. You have to use a coarser grind. You have to do it for a longer period of time and then filter it out. And you really need to filter it out because there's a lot of fines and sediment that finds its way into the actual coffee when you brew that way, versus something like a drip or filter coffee, where the coffee and the filter itself does a lot of that work for you as far as making the coffee come out clear. And in my experience, I find that the percolation, the drip style of coffee, gives you a lot of unique benefits. Aside from the clarity, you get better expression of flavors, you get the lack of sediment, and then also I find that you can make it stronger easily.
So, Justin, let me get back here on screen. So, as we talk about this, can you tell me, kind of how you see it working with coffee? With beer or other infusion. You talked about that a lot in the presentation, and I thought that was cool.
So yeah, basically because of those unique benefits, essentially what you get is a concentrated coffee flavor that's perfectly balanced and profiled, and that can be titrated into anything you want to add it to. So if you want to make a coffee beer, instead of trying to dry bean the coffee beer and add coffee grounds to maybe like the hot step of your beer brewing, which is very unscientific for a lot of different reasons. Your water mineral composition is completely off for coffee brewing. The temperatures are kind of different. So there are a lot of just kind of technical aspects that don't really translate well to coffee brewing. The Kyoto style process allows you to actually just create a coffee concentrate that can be added to a finished beer. So your beer is completely done, and you just add it to your bright tank or whatever vessel you finish your beer in, and you can just weigh it out. So it's very scientific, and you can also conduct TDS readings on it and everything. So it's like just much more manageable because you're adding the coffee to the beer as the very final step. So.
Now, Justin, you talk like you know something about beer because I heard bright tank in your vocabulary.
yeah. I have a bright tank, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not brewing beer in it.
I'm not brewing beer. Yeah, no.
So you're brewing
whole coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
the SS Brew Tech one
okay.
barrel. So.
Well, then there's a tremendous amount of similarities between brewing coffee Kyoto style and brewing beer.
Yeah, there is. That's why I'm partnered up with a brewery here right now. I've, for the past, I want to say 4 years, been doing Kyoto style for them.
And they use that in their beer to get a coffee infused beer?
They use it in, they do very traditional German lagers. I mean, we've done a coffee infused Helles lager that's still maintained its straw color and just like beautiful presentation, and just great purity, because, you know, with that particular brewing style, you really can't hide anywhere. Any flaws
Right.
are very apparent in the beer, but also they're apparent in the coffee too. So there's nowhere to hide, and I just love that.
Well, you briefly showed me what your Kyoto brewer looked like. Is it possible for you to turn your camera over to where that is?
Yep. So yep, this is what a Kyoto style brewer looks like. It doesn't come with the trophy. You got to win those. But at the top, you see it has the reservoir that holds the water with a valve that allows you to introduce that water one drop at a time. That center chamber there is what holds your coffee grounds. And then at the bottom, you have a carafe, which collects it all. So essentially, you're adding fresh water to the coffee grounds as the saturated water leaves the system, constantly introducing fresh water to the coffee grounds, which is important for just extraction.
Well, so what about the trophies?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I won it's actually funny. So I got second place at America's Best Cold Brew at what was it, Coffee Fest? Yeah, so it's a big coffee fest at Navy Pier. I don't know if you're familiar with Navy Pier in Chicago, but it's basically this big kind of entertainment center. And they have a convention hall that they rented out, and we did a cold brew competition. I got a controversial second place, which was kind of interesting. Basically, I got, because I saw the how it was scored. It was basically split between the crowd favorite and then the judges, the three judges favorite. And with the crowd, we had hundreds and hundreds of people lined up tasting the coffee. I got 76% of the crowd vote, but I lost all three judges. The judges' scores were weighted. So
Ah,
yeah,
okay. So you won the popular vote.
I won the popular vote, and it was funny because with all that, I got like 51, or I got 49% of the vote when you account for the weighting. So
Well, as a businessman, I imagine that counted the most to you anyway.
yeah, I mean, I knew that I had something as far as the people went, and there were people who were coming and getting in line, and they were literally skipping all the other coffees and coming straight to mine and saying, "Hey, my friend told me I should come try your coffee." They weren't, because we were all, people were lined up in a queue to try all the coffees in a row, and literally they just walked straight to my booth and just grabbed my coffee, and they were like, "Hey, I was told I need to try this."
So it sounds like in our upcoming event, you can teach us how to do Kyoto style coffee. You will also show us your homemade rig that is not as fancy as the one we just saw, but it's substantially less expensive
Right,
to
yeah, how to
manufacture.
DIY your brewer.
Okay. So we can learn, we can see how it's done right. If you want to spend the money, we can see how to do a good DIY of a
Well,
Kyoto style.
the DIY comes out identical. It's
Identical.
in terms of quality, identical.
Okay.
So yeah, so
And then,
it's a really great bargain.
so can we talk about also how you've learned working with a brewery to infuse this Kyoto style coffee into beer and so that you get a really delicious coffee style beer?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you another thing too that's great. With this particular method of adding Kyoto style to beer, you can literally pull a bottle of beer off the shelf and then just titrate coffee directly into the bottle. If you know how much coffee, or you know how much beer is in that bottle, the gram weight of it, you can just titrate a percentage of coffee into that and know what your blend will taste like. So if you have, you know, you're a home brewer and you've already bottled up whatever it is you're
Yeah.
brewing, you want to know how that's going to taste, or if you want to compare side by side a bunch of different beers and you have them bottled up, you don't have to, you know, go through all the trouble of exposing them to oxygen over a long period of time, or, you know, doing all this stuff, or just rebrewing beer just so you can add coffee to it. You can pull those bottles off the shelf, titrate coffee into each of them, and then try them side by side.
And I heard you say essentially if you go ahead and create the Kyoto style coffee, you can save it in a liter jar for days, weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it definitely for days in a jar. I'll show you my product. This is what my pouches look like, and this valve basically it lets the coffee out, but it doesn't let air in. So as you dispense the coffee, it just flattens.
Okay.
And
So
that
like
keeps,
a wine box,
I'm sorry?
like a box of wine.
Exactly, yeah. So it just keeps it from having any exposure with oxygen, because the thing about coffee is, you know how coffee has a great aroma and you're smelling it?
Mhm.
Well, that is actually leaving the coffee. So it's no longer there for you to taste it and enjoy it. So as that coffee kind of sits in an open container, like a jar, you're kind of losing the essence of it and it's going stale. By having it inside of this package here, it just kind of help preserve it. So even as you start to get low on coffee, we've preserved that quality.
Well, I think this will be a really fun event. So as we wrap up, what else do you have? As I recall, you had kind of a coffee infused beer recipe. What was it you were showing at CoffeeCon?
So yeah, that was actually I guess you would call it like an amuse-bouche, using and so I was using the Old Rasputin Imperial Stout.
Yep.
I was using a really nice cherry liqueur, not too sweet, just a very nice, great cherry flavor liqueur. Punta Mez, which is a bitter vermouth, and then also some coffee. And we basically just combined those in a specific ratio that I'll share with you guys, and just heated it up and made a nice sipping drink that almost drinks like a espresso, but just like really warming and just excellent. Little pink peppercorn on top of that, cracked as well, just for the aromatics of it. But it just works.
Old Rasputin is a darn good beer as is, so I
Great
can
beer. It's a
imagine
great
what it
beer.
would be with all that stuff added to it.
Yeah, and we actually use a light roast coffee with that, just because it plays off the berry notes really nicely. Because Old Rasputin, even though it's an imperial stout, it has a great sourness, which I like quite a bit.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. So as we wrap up, because I know you've got some customers you need to help,
Oh yeah.
how would you summarize Kyoto style coffee and its benefits?
So yeah, Kyoto Style coffee basically allows you to have a repeatable, consistent, high quality, fine coffee product that can be drunk really any way you want to. You can have it hot or cold. On my recipes, on my pouch, you can have it hot as well just by adding hot water to it. And then it just has a bunch of versatile different uses for different applications and cocktails and beers. This style of coffee has existed for at least 400 years. And a part of the reason why it was used is because it's so stable. So even though it's called Kyoto style coffee, it originates from Holland. And this was the preferred method of brewing coffee on ships because the coffee was very stable. You could brew it and it would last for a good amount of time. And also it didn't require you to use heat or fire. So you would use your fuel for something more important. So, and those benefits that allowed it to be kind of shelf stable and the preferred use translate to modern day just fine beverages.
Well, that precedes at least a lot of the English style beers that we talk an awful lot about, because you're talking 400 years ago. No kidding. Well, I can tell this is going to be a lot of fun. I know you've got to go. Thank you so much for your time today. I'll be looking forward to receiving those coffees that we'll be talking about. And again, for those of you that joined us, and thank you so much for joining, pop in your questions, kind of let me know, email me. I think everybody's got my email address, and we will work towards Justin's event coming up soon. April 1st, right now.
Looking forward
All
to
right.
it.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate your time so much, and I really look forward to it.
Absolutely, me too.